Hi, it's Jane Turner here from writewithjane.com, and I'm talking to Veronica Kirin, who has written this beautiful book, Stories of Elders. And I just want to delve down into how this came about. So welcome, Veronica, and thank you for coming.
Thanks. Hi, everyone.
So tell me more about what was that call to action that ultimately brought this book about?
Yeah, kind of several things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're talking about how the universe just kind of shoves you off a cliff sometimes, and you're like, okay, I don't know. And so I was running a tech company in 2015, and I was noticing that, you know, to be running a tech company, you have to be on tech like a lot.
Sure.
A lot.
Mm.
And I noticed that how I was thinking about communication and how I was thinking about my clients and how often I would even see other human beings, you know, that was all kind of shifting because of the technology. And so I was starting to get uncomfortable. And, you know, discomfort is a very good indicator, as we also have mentioned in our recent conversation. And then at the same time, I noticed that I wasn't the only one uncomfortable. And I think that was really key. That articles and newscasts and bloggers were all talking about this topic of what's technology doing to us. And this is really, I mean, now, you know, it's this 2019, we're now really in the trenches of it. We're talking about generational divides, and I mean, there's a lot happening here. But in 2015, that's when the rumble started.
Okay.
And so my background's in anthropology, so if I feel like I am faced with a problem, my solution is to go talk to people. And so
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. And so the thought process over the few months I was developing the project was who would have the best perspective on this. And to me that was the elders, because they lived so long before tech that they really could give a proper compare and contrast to what was happening today.
Now what's interesting to me here is the word, the elders. And as we sit in this room, just to describe the background that you're looking at now, is that we're at the State Library of New South Wales, which does a wonderful job, I think, of acknowledging the Indigenous background to the space that we're working in. And just this imagery is very much in that, in that vein. And of course, we talk about Indigenous elders, and there's a lot of respect. However, that is not necessarily the case around the world, is it? That the word elder could have negative connotations.
Yeah, and so, we don't talk about our elders in America in a positive light. And that's actually why I used the word, because usually we say old people or older generations or grandma, or now there's the phrase okay boomer, which people are using, which I feel is very derogatory. But when we talk about elders, usually there's reference there. That's what I was harking toward. And so not that I've heard some discourse online of, you know, people saying, well, like, you don't have to like listen to everything that they talk about. They might not be good. It might not be good advice, or it might not be a good person, or what have you. And it's like, okay, yeah, but like listen to your elders. It's not live by everything that they say. It's they have something to offer. Listen to it, and then judge your life accordingly against that. And so that's the whole purpose of the book, is here's some information, do what you will with it.
And quite an amazing journey that you had writing it, though. You drove 11,000 miles interviewing people across America. Tell me more about that. First, how did you find the people? How did you know where to go?
So I've been an entrepreneur for almost 5 years at that point. And entrepreneurship teaches you networking. And so that was literally how I found people. Was I called people up on the phone that I knew nationwide, and I said, who do you know? And so I followed that rabbit trail, and some of it was through social media, but a lot of it was just phone calls with families and friends. And I just said, okay, like I find people, and I'll just follow that trail. And that's how I drew the map. You know, the map's in the front of the book, and that's how that map got formed. And there were a couple people that snuck in at the last minute, so I was actually already on the road. I'd already left my home, and I would get an email that, are you into this state yet? Could you still stop and interview so-and-so?
Oh,
So I'd have to
fantastic.
change the map as I go.
Wow. And that was a 3-year journey?
No, so the travel it was between 11 and 12,000 miles. I actually, I had to switch cars partway through, so I don't have the actual odometer.
Oh, got it.
I was at 10.3, I think, with 10,300 miles, so I don't know kilometers. By the time I got to North Carolina, and that was already, it was like 3/4 of the way done.
Oh, right.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, that was done in 6 weeks.
That was 6 weeks, but the writing the book.
The writing of the book then was 3 years.
Yes, because that's you've then got a lot of information.
Yeah, about 8,000 years
put into
of life.
a form that other people are going to be able to learn.
Yeah.
The lessons, because that's ultimately what it's about, isn't it? It's about moving into a future that's informed by the past.
Yes.
Not doing it in the bubble.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You often get a sense that did we not learn anything?
We're sitting here talking, like, how are we even doing this? Like, we could not be doing this without technology.
Indeed, absolutely.
And we were saying, like, this is really fabulous. But just as you're saying, to jump in and adopt technology just because it's cool or exciting isn't a very good reason, at least not in my opinion. Because eventually you might end up in a place where you didn't want to be. Or like, we're talking about data now. We're finally publicly having that conversation. We've been talking about big data for years in the tech world, but finally the public is starting to get concerned about what's Facebook doing with my data.
Yes.
And it's creepy, and so like they actually can influence your behavior very easily without you realizing it. So anyway, if you don't have intentionality behind your usage, then you might end up someplace you don't want to be.
That's nicely put. Now, what would you like this book to achieve?
Oh gosh. Well, so I think this is one of those books that kind of seasons well with age.
Nice. Okay.
And like I said, I'm hoping that. So, this generation is passing on. I've already lost at least a quarter. It might even be a third now of the people I interviewed.
Wow.
So I'm going through kind of this loss process as well with these people that, it's funny actually, I spent so much time with these people's stories, but technically I actually only met them for an hour or two. And so when I return to see them, because I happen to be traveling or what have you, sometimes they don't even really remember me. And to me, they are as important to me as grandparents were.
Wow.
Right? So I'm in this strange place. And yeah, some of them are passing on. So with that, we're losing knowledge. They say every time an older person passes away, we lose a library of information.
This is true. Well, one of the things you've created here is actually a historical record. I'm just going to hold the book up again because it's really quite beautiful. This is tactilely a really beautiful book.
I love
and
that feeling.
The pages just, I've really now fallen in love after just handling your book now with these cream,
the texture,
the colour, but the texture is lovely. It's, yes, look, you've done a great job of producing the book, but that's an important historical record. And it's done in a particular way. You've gone and had conversations with people.
There was a lot of intentionality.
Yes, indeed.
Which is a little bit of the lesson of the book.
Yes.
As well as intentionality.
So you're here in Australia with me now.
Yes.
You live in LA.
Yeah.
You've been touring around with the book. You will be touring around the US with the book.
I did it, yeah. So it's been out for a little over a year now. And so during the anniversary, I traveled straight across the United States from Michigan to Los Angeles. And toured the book, and that was really good.
Fabulous.
There was a slight ulterior motive that arose during the book tour because I am starting the follow-up book to this.
Yes.
And so I was also looking for those people to interview, and I found a few because I need, again, a national narrative. That's very important.
Lovely. Tell me more about that, the next book.
I'm really excited about it. So my life is utterly changed forever by spending so much time with elders. I feel like I can see and understand history in a way that it almost feels like The Giver. Like I've been given stories that aren't mine, and that has expanded my universe utterly. I'm excited about this new book, however, which is going to be called Stories of Tech, because I'm going to be working with Gen Z.
Fantastic.
So I interviewed the people who grew up totally without technology.
Yes.
Most of their lives. Now, and I mean high tech, you know, there's technology like, I mean, some of them grew up before radios and cars, but okay. But before high tech, and now I'm going to interview a generation that has
don't
only
know
the
other
world.
way.
Right.
Wow.
And they are they're starting to come of age, right? So they're the oldest is about 23 years old in Gen Z, and they are under so much scrutiny and getting so much told to them about how they're screwing up because they're on technology all the time and they're goofing up and blah blah and they don't care. Da, da, da. There's like so much rhetoric from elders, which is why we're talking about that phrase "okay, boomer." That's where it's coming from.
I actually hadn't heard that before. What does it mean?
So if somebody who is older, and it might not actually be a baby boomer, but somebody who is in the older generation says something that seems older of opinion, right? So it might be condescending, but it might not be. It could be political, it could be social, who knows what they said. Younger generations are simply replying, "Okay, boomer."
And so it's to discount.
It discounts it.
Really,
it takes away the opportunity for any sort of conversation, any reaching of understanding, and that's why I cringe, because I'm an anthropologist. I'm all about sharing stories. That's critical to my work. And so that phrase, makes me cringe, but I also know where it's coming from because Gen Z is under fire.
Yeah, and they weren't sort of built for dialogue. It's a different thing that we're doing now.
Well, so I disagree.
Based
on what? Yeah, based
lovely.
On,
I love it.
So and that's why I'm excited about the book, because I'm a millennial, so I'm stuck in the middle, right? I think that Gen Z has a lot more to offer than
no question about that.
And there's definitely
it's just more or less that skill of dialoguing. Yeah, the patience to dialogue. To sit with somebody like you and have a conversation like this. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and she'll say, "Okay, I'm not interested anymore." And not in a mean way, though, just to let me know that she's got enough information, Mum. Thanks. I'm out of here. Maybe it's just my experience.
Well, and it's also, I remember
this kind of chewing the fat.
Yeah,
I love it.
I don't think I knew how to do this though until I was older.
This is right. It's a skill.
So I don't know if it's necessarily generational or if it's just
interesting. You might be able to find this out.
I hope
and report back.
Yeah, so I'm working on this. Excellent. And I'm looking for people to interview right now, but they do have to be American, so that's, I do have the American listeners, but
because you want to just keep it within the same, so that there is, you're doing apples and apples rather than apples and oranges.
And there's definitely conversation being had with my publisher, do I go for a grant and try and do a compare and contrast overseas? That would be very fun, but I have
That's a longer term.
Yeah, and I have to anthropologically constrain it in order to have any sort of compare and contrast that's valid.
Fair enough. Great. Yeah. Well, now tell me. I love to ask authors this question.
Yes.
Were there barriers that you had to overcome? And on this note, I'm going to hold up my book because, of course, we've exchanged books. Mine is Mindset for Authors: How to Overcome Perfectionism, Procrastination, and Self-Doubt.
Yeah.
Anything in that realm and/or practical matters that you had to overcome to do this important work?
Yeah. So the easy answer is, of course, we were talking about the shitty first draft and getting used to that, and that's not me being crass. That's the actual phrase coined by Anne Lamott. And so getting comfortable with just getting it out on the page, and then go through the interviews and bring them in, because I had them all in my head. I knew exactly who said what. I just have that kind of mind. So getting comfortable with the initial brain dump, and that's even still today. You just have to do that. You just have to get it out.
Yes.
Even in my essay writing, you just have to get it out, and then you go and edit, and then you go take it to writers' critique groups, and you work with editors, and that's when you do. Writing's really about editing, not writing.
Yes.
So there's that. That's the easy answer, because a lot of us know, there's that struggle. The hard answer
to get through the ugly mess.
Yeah. Right, that we
which
all,
is necessary.
there's the rose-colored lenses we all have with our first book of like, I'm going to be an author and it's going to be romantic and, you know, I'm going to be like Hemingway, I'm going to sit at the cafe and smoke a cigarette and drink a coffee and schmooze with the who's who, and really what happens is like you're pulling out your hair and you're crying and you are pacing and it's like giving birth.
Yes.
In
Yes.
a lot
You're
of
thinking,
ways.
this is no good. Why do I think I could
why
do
do I
this?
have any sort of worth as an author? So that's the easy part of my answer. The hard part of my answer is that sort of along the lines of the romance of it, I pushed myself too hard. And so I believed in the mission and the concept of what I was doing, and I really wanted to meet all of these people and honor the fact that, you know, I went to them in person because that's what that generation expects.
Yes.
With Gen Z, I'm doing it all digital because that's what that generation expects. Right?
This is interesting.
So I'm on the road for 6 weeks, and I'm alone. I'm doing 12,000 miles, and I'm either interviewing, eating, sleeping, or driving. Right? And sometimes I'm doing the eating and driving at the same time.
Right.
And I'm driving through the Rocky Mountains and it's after a snowstorm, or, you know, it was stressful and I pushed myself too hard.
Lack of self-care.
Really, really bad. Really bad. So I got home and I crashed and I really went into a depression about this book for a year, and I honestly considered just not writing it.
Right.
I had damaged myself so much and damaged my view of the book because the book was the source of the pain.
Got it.
And so even for fiction writers, you know, if you're doing research of any sort, you are putting yourself through something in order to write. And so self-care, as you said, you know, we talked a little bit about that in our initial conversation. It's just so critical. And I mean, today working with entrepreneurs, it's a big part of what I talk about too, because whether you're an author or an entrepreneur or, you know, take X, Y, or Z, whatever you are, you can't do your life's mission if you burn yourself out.
Exactly.
And I burned myself out, and I suffered. People are passing away, and I'm not writing because I'm depressed, right? So it was bad.
Yeah, your whole life became this. And the interesting thing too is that I'll get people coming along and they say, oh, I don't know what happens because when I sit to write, my mind goes blank, I can't write. And I say, yes, well, people call that writer's block. What I call that is stress. And of course, what happens to us when we're in a stressed state, and
the brain shuts down.
It does. You're working from the wrong part of the brain. You're working from the prehistoric part of the brain, and all that cares about is survival.
Right.
So that part of your brain could not care less if you get your book written or not. That part of your brain is telling you need to sleep, you need to rest. You're in crisis, physically in crisis, and potentially emotionally as well.
Right.
Because when we're rested, of course, we've got access to our prefrontal cortex. That's where all of our languaging skills live. That's where also from a willpower, we call it willpower, it could be called a lot of things, but it's about an understanding of consequences. We're in the logical part of our brain then, and we can say to ourselves, look, I need to sit down and get this done, so I need to calm down first because people are dying and I need to get their stories documented. You had a higher purpose here,
right?
But you could have lost it all. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
I am too. I'm so proud of it. It's I think really the best thing that I've done in my life, and it's totally not about me at all. You know,
that's right.
That's
right. Yes.
But yeah, I did something hopefully for others, and that in the future, as it goes, we were saying that these stories are leaving the earth quite literally, and so maybe in a decade, people are looking back and saying, "What was that transition point like?" Here we have it.
And here we have it.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I jumped in a moment ago when you were talking about the entrepreneurs that you work with. Tell me more about that part of your work.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur since 2010 and have kind of just had a very bizarre mixed version of entrepreneurship where I founded a nonprofit And then I founded a tech company, and then I founded a design company that was event oriented, so it was like an event company for designers, and just kind of like been all over the map. I've had a startup that I was trying to, in America, we're talking about student loans are very bad.
Oh, yes.
And so I was trying to fix that problem with a startup, and just I had like all these different ideas. But I eventually, I found what works and what doesn't. I've been in so many different industries that I can really speak to them, and the United States has a program very similar to the Peace Corps, but it's internal, called AmeriCorps. And then within that structure, there is a branch called the National Civilian Community Corps. And so it's almost like being in the National Guard, where you are training on a base and deploying across the United States, where you're doing disaster relief instead of firing a gun. Okay. So I was at Katrina, I was in American Samoa when the tsunami hit, and all of that. And so I've been all over the United States, and I've done so many random things. So not just my businesses, but also all these other experiences I had before I started entrepreneurship. So that gives me a really good lens into what to do, like the basic structures of like what to do, how do you found a business, how do you do it legally, how do you make sure that if you have a co-founder that you have that conversation properly and you have founders agreements and
Yes.
But also like, what's your industry like? I probably have a lens into it because I've just done so much random stuff.
That's right, because people need to face the question of is this a business or is it a hobby?
Yeah.
In other words, can you make money?
Right. Yeah. Is there a market for it? And then the anthropological brain goes, okay, now I can see into a target market because I'm trained to see into other cultures. So there's all these different layers.
And
for
so
me
you're
as an
helping
entrepreneur
people,
coach.
are you, at the startup phase?
I actually tend to help them a little further in. I love helping at the startup phase, but oftentimes they're just not ready to bring in a coach. They're just like, there's no funding.
or they haven't had enough problems yet.
Right.
Haven't hit enough walls yet.
Yeah, because that's the thing is that unfortunately, like I would love to start any business right off the bat with anyone. Like you want a good business started with the best foundation possible, I'm there for you.
Right.
But most people don't realize that's what they need. So as you said, they have to be in more pain before they hire a coach consultant. And so usually it's 2 to 5 years in.
Yes.
And I specialize in scaling. Which is what I did with my tech company. So that's where people say, like, how are you working 10 hours a week and traveling the world? It's because I scaled my business and I had a team.
And you can. That's right. You get that freedom because you've got something there
and that's
working
what we all dream
for you. You're not working
exactly. But people don't know how to do that if they've been working for somebody else so long. They think it looks this way, but it actually looks that way. So.
Yeah, I wish I knew you 5 years ago, frankly.
Right. Yeah, I know, that's the thing. But like, would you have known that you needed me 5 years ago?
No, not
that's
at
the
all.
Issue.
And it's not dissimilar to me. I run a lot of workshops just with the basics of how to write the book.
Yeah,
often it may well take, you said 2 to 5 years, it sometimes takes people 2 years to come back and say, you know what, I was sure I could do this, but I can't. I need more help.
Right.
I need help in being accountable. I need help with structure. I need help with someone to review it and tell me this is going, that this works or this doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that we've kind of come our journeys ourselves, haven't we? And we're now able to help people who want to hopefully fast track a little bit and collapse down the learning curve, because mine's been close to a 5-year learning curve about how to monetize. Okay, I did my hero's journey. I found out what I was meant to be doing, which is to help people to write books to build their business around. But I was hardly a great example of building a business around it. I got there, but gosh, and it did include hooking in to the expertise of people like you.
Yeah.
Because yes, you can learn it all yourself, but I don't know how many.
Take you so long.
Exactly.
And people
and actually, do you ever really properly learn it yourself? But why would you even want to?
Right. I mean, yes, you can build your contracts for your clients yourself, but is it going to be any good? No. It's even that, like, how do you get your professional services procured? I talked to a young man who was like, he said he needed just a little bit of advice, and he actually needed a lot of advice. But he was saying, me and my co-founders are kind of at odds because they want more equity than I'm willing to give them. And he'd had the company for 11 months before he brought them on. So he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, what documentation do you have? None. the company's actually not even founded on paper.
The risk.
And they've been, I
Wow.
know. And so he has no footing to stand on, and the company's been alive for a year and a half. So it's stuff like that where I'm like, I wish I could get in front of people earlier, but unfortunately they don't hit Google looking for somebody like me until they're really in a bad place.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, look, this has been wonderful.
Oh,
What I
yeah,
want to do is
agree.
just recommend stories of elders, and your subtitle, what the greatest generation knows about technology and you don't.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a compelling subtitle.
Yeah.
So look, this is on Amazon.
Yep.
Look
Barnes and
up,
Noble,
yes,
wherever
all
you-
over the place.
Yeah.
Oh, and this has been wonderful talking to you. Thank you
for
so
having me.
much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.